Hello, everyone. Thank you very much for joining us today. I'm really excited about today's webinar. Uh, I've known David actually for a very long time, and as far as like the data space in London goes, and very excited to have him and his co-founder Michael on the webinar today. Large language models have been all the rage for the last feels like a couple months, but it's probably been at least a year since all of this properly kicked off. Is just the way time flies. And the team at Delphi have been doing some really cool stuff around semantic layers and LLMs and integrating the two for, I guess, kind of what we've always wanted, which is the ability to just ask a question and get the right data in response to. And so I'll be handing over to them in just a second, and they're going to tell you all about what they've been building at Delphi. Before we do so, if you haven't joined us before, we run these webinars every 2 weeks. They are just to bring the Looker community together, give us all an opportunity to learn, to skill up, hear from interesting people. We host them as Spectacles. If you're not familiar with Spectacles, we're a validation tool for Looker. And so if you're a large or Looker team of any size, particularly like a large deployment, a large projects, or feeling the pain of multiple people developing on Looker simultaneously, Spectacles may be able to help and hit us up. We'd love to chat. Our next webinar is in 2 weeks. We're going to be teaming up with the team at Datatonic to talk about row-level data security. And so if you're doing any type of dynamic filtering or things like that using user attributes, they've done a ton of that work and are really experts at it. And so highly recommend joining us for that. For all of our webinars, you can head to spectacles.dev/webinars and sign up. You can also find all the recordings of prior webinars. So you'll be able to find the recording for this one there tomorrow. But we've done at least a dozen of these webinars now going since the end of last year. And so there's a nice back catalog there. So go have a look, see if there's anything that might be of interest. Scan through the ones that you've missed. I'm going to hand over to David and Michael in just a second. The last thing I'll say is, as I know many of you have already joined, we have a Slack community and a Slack channel that we use for each webinar to manage the discussion and Q&A and things like that. I've just dropped them in the chat for Zoom. Head over there, let us know where you're calling from. But also, and I guess particularly, as you think of questions, as David and Michael are talking, ask them there. We'll do a Q&A at the end, and I'll be fielding questions from that Slack channel. So yeah, head there, ask your questions as you go, have any discussion you want around the presentation that we're about to see. And yeah, we'll be picking questions there shortly after their presentation. So on that note, I'm going to hand over to David and Michael and kind of disappear into the background. So David, Michael, thank you very much. We're looking forward to this. And yeah, I'll hand over to you now.
Thanks so much, Dylan. Thanks for having us. It's great to be here. As Dylan mentioned before, we've kind of known each other from the London data scene for a while. And Dylan actually introduced me to the idea of the modern data stack and being, Snowflake, Looker, DBT. So I'm David, CEO and co-founder at Delphi Labs, and we've been going for about 6 months, where we've really been like developing our product, integrating many semantic layers, including Looker. And what's been really great is seeing the reception that we've had towards this product, which, as Dylan mentioned, the fundamental goal of this product is to allow people to ask questions and get the right data back. And one of the things that's different about Delphi compared to some of the other text-to-SQL products that you may have seen out there is we don't generate SQL, we generate a semantic layer request. So for example, with a tool like Looker, we take your metrics and dimensions from your Looker catalog, index them, and find the ones that are relevant to your question, use that to generate our prompt, which generates a Looker semantic layer request. And so what that means is, fundamentally, we've constrained the large language model by providing it with this model of the world, which is which in Looker is in LookerML. And then also it's constrained again in terms of what it can actually request, in terms of it being the semantic layer request, which is much more constrained than writing raw SQL. And it's been something where, Looker is obviously a huge piece of that like semantic layer landscape at the moment. I think more organizations use Looker and its semantic layer with LookerML than probably all of the other modern data stack semantic layers combined, especially from like an internal analytics use case. So it's really great to be able to work with all the data teams out there, hundreds if not thousands, who use Looker today. And so without further ado, I'll let Michael introduce himself and show you what we can do in Delphi with Looker.
Thanks, David. Yeah, so I'm Michael. I'm the other co-founder and the CTO here at Delphi Labs. And so kind of in my previous life before starting Delphi, I was doing analytics engineering. I was leading a data team and we used Looker. And so a lot of what we've built here with Delphi really comes out of our experience using Looker and other pieces of the modern data stack, and feeling like there just had to be an easier way for folks, especially non-technical folks from the business side, to get value and answers out of your data. So without any further ado, I'm going to try and share my screen, and I can walk you through some examples of how you would use Delphi. All right, so this is the Delphi web app that I have pulled up here. And I'll start out on the settings tab, because this is what you would see when you are first getting started with Delphi. So when you set up an account, it will bring you in here. And the first thing it'll do is prompt you to connect to your semantic layer. And so we support a few different types of semantic layers, including some BI tools like Looker and Metabase and Lightdash, as well as other headless semantic layers like Cube and the DBT Cloud semantic layer. But for today's demo, we'll be focusing on Looker, of course. And so this is what it looks like when you set up Looker. It's a really simple connection, right? You just enter your Looker instance's URL, and you have to create API credentials for the user who's going to be accessing it. Enter the client ID and client secret for those API credentials here. And then you're pretty much off to the races. A few other options you get with Looker is that you can choose to use credential pass-through, which means when people query via Delphi, we can pass through their credentials from their own Looker accounts so that they only have access to the models and explorers that they should be able to see. The other thing you can do when setting up Looker is you can actually choose which explorers you want Delphi to connect to. And the reason for that is because we've talked to a bunch of teams who sometimes will have like dozens or even hundreds, in some cases, of explorers, and most of them are not kind of business ready. They're not ready for the end user to query. And so this is a way of letting Delphi, only see the things that people should be able to access. And so with that, I will just show you kind of how Delphi works. So one nice feature of Delphi is that you can use it kind of as a bit of a data catalog via natural language. And so as a way to understand what's available for you in your semantic layer or in Looker. And so I'll ask it, for example, what info do we have about discounts? And so it pulls up the metrics that we have about discounts. It pulls up the dimensions that we have about discounts, discount price, the product that it's associated with, sort of when the discount was made. And so, that's a way without having to kind of either dig through your LookML or dig through an Explore and Looker of understanding what's available to you. You could go even deeper and ask something like, what are some questions I could ask about discounts in our data? And it gives me some ideas of, queries I could run basically using the data that we have in Looker about our discounts. And so I'll actually just go ahead and run one of these to show you what it looks like when Delphi runs a query. And we'll do that over here in the Explore tab. I'll ask it this question it suggested for me, which is, what is the distribution of discounts by day, week, or month? And so you'll notice, first thing here is, unlike some of the other tools that have existed in the past, we're not, this isn't like a keyword-based query or something like that. We're not saying, show me discount ID by discount date, week, or something like that, right? We're kind of asking about discounts in natural language, in plain English, in the same way that someone on the sales team, on the customer success team might ask about their data. And so Delphi will tell us kind of a natural language answer about what we asked. And so it tells me the days that we had the most discounts, the weeks we had the most discounts, as well as the months, kind of the distribution and grouping by month. The other thing we can do here is we can actually build some charts based on the data that it pulled. And so you'll see when I look at the data that was pulled, we got date, week, and month, as well as the number of discounts in each of those groupings. And so, we could build a simple chart off of that, something like looking at the number of discounts that we had by week. And then, maybe let's color it by month. Some other nice things you can do here. You can see the query that was generated. And so this is, just a LookML query with some fields. It has the model and the Explorer that this is coming from. And then because everything we have here is a semantic layer query, and in this case, a Looker query, you can actually just, view this in Looker and use it as a starting point, even for exploring something in Looker. And so I'll log into our Looker instance here and show you, right? We pulled up this query that I just ran via Delphi. And then if I wanted to explore something further, dig into, the average discount, add some more fields, add some filtering, stuff like that, I can do that in Looker now. I'll show you one other query just to show you kind of some stuff we can do here. And so maybe I want to dig a little deeper into our discounts, and I'll ask it, what product types do we discount the most? And so if I look at the query that was generated here, or the data while it's loading the answer, you'll notice that it pulled the product's category dimension for me. And so I asked it what product types. It was smart enough to realize, okay, based on the fields that are available in these Looker Explorers, actually what we want to know is the category. And so the product categories we discount the most are underwear, blazers and jackets, and tops and tees. Gives me the average discount for those. I don't know what's going on with our underwear, but okay. And then, again, you can chart this if you want to. So I'll just do a simple chart, category with the average discount amount, sort it descending, can make this chart a little bigger, and then we can save that. For other people in the company to come into Delphi and refer to in our saved reports. And then the last kind of really cool thing I'll show you is we have a really strong Slack integration. And so installing Delphi to Slack and giving people a way to Slack Delphi with their data questions instead of, slacking a person is super simple, right? You just click here to install and then do some configuration. And so I'll show you what that looks like in Slack. Here we have Delphi installed in our Slack. It's connected again to this exact same Looker instance based on what we had set up there. Setup in Slack is really simple. You basically just enter those credentials that were on that last page. And then you have a few options here, which I can go into deeper if anyone is interested, but that's really just around, we know that data is a multiplayer experience, and we want the data team to be involved as much as they want to be in helping people out, validating their questions, and making sure that people are getting good results from Delphi and from Looker. So, the main thing you're going to do with Delphi and Slack is add it to a channel. This could be, the data channel where people typically ask their data questions. Alternatively, people can DM Delphi as well. First thing it will do is introduce itself so that people kind of understand what it can do. They can also pull up that data catalog that I was showing you. And then with this, I want to show you how Delphi can kind of handle a bit more complex queries than what we were looking at before. And so I could ask it something like, show me our sales this year by country. And I want you to look at it monthly and show the percentage growth month over month. And so here we're looking at a period over period analysis where we want to see the growth. It's not just pulling some kind of simple measures and dimensions. So it generated the query. Now it's running it against the Looker instance. And here's our answer. So it tells me our sales for the two countries that we have sales in here, which are the United States and the UK. It shows me those by month for this year. And then for each of those, well, what was the period? What was the percent change from the previous period? It also gives me kind of a little helpful text summary here. I'll highlight just a couple more things, fun things that you can do in the Slack integration. So oftentimes people want to explore their data in Excel or in Google Sheets. You can do that, download it as a CSV. Again, you can see the Looker query that was run. You can open it in Looker to explore further like we did before. And then you can also schedule queries if this is something that you want to run monthly, for example, or weekly. You can just say that every month on the 1st at 9 a.m. and choose a user or a channel to send it to. Then we also have this concept of thumbs up, thumbs downs, where if you need to refine the query or something, if it got something wrong or you just want something else, you can give it a thumbs down. In this case, it got this exactly right. And so I'm going to give this a thumbs up. And what that does is lets us essentially train Delphi based on the way that you ask questions in your business and the way that people talk about your data, and train it on a customer by customer basis. And that's how it gets better and better over time. Very last thing to note is that, as you all know from working with Looker in the modern data stack, sometimes you don't actually need a net new query to answer someone's question. And maybe that sometimes a dashboard or a look already exists and a business user just doesn't know where to look for it. And so Delphi can search those as well. And so if I say something like, show me our website analytics, well, this actually relates to a dashboard that we have in Looker. And so it can suggest that for me. It says, well, I don't actually need to run a new query for this maybe because you already have this in your web analytics overview dashboard. And so now the user can just bring this up and see what's available in the dashboard. Of course, if they want to look at something that wasn't here, they can always go back and ask Delphi for more information. And so that's really it for the demo I had. overall, our goal is that, we hope Delphi will make it much easier for folks, especially non-technical folks and business users, to get value out of Looker or your semantic layer.
Awesome. Michael and David, thank you very much. That was really cool to see. Super interesting. So I really appreciate you guys taking the time to walk us through that. We're going to go to a Q&A now. We don't have any questions yet, but I'd invite all of you who are here, if you have any questions for Michael and David, head to the Slack channel. I know many of you are in there already, but I'm just going to share the links again in the chat. I can see some people are typing already. Yeah, let us know your questions, and I'll ask them to the group here. David and Michael, just to kick off, and I know this isn't core to your Looker integration, and I guess slightly away from the area of analytics, but I think this is probably a group who have done some thinking, or maybe some use of LLMs in some way, certainly typically probably gone into OpenAI and used ChatGPT in some way. Can you talk a little more about how you're using those models and kind of what that looks like, and maybe it's just a high level for those who might be interested?
Yeah, for sure. So we're using large language models like at a few different places in the process here. And so some of those were things that you'll see, and some of them are kind of hidden in the background. And so one kind of obvious thing that we're doing with it is asking the large language model to generate a query for Looker or for your other semantic layer that matches the question that was asked. And so that's going to be based on both the question that was asked, as well as the metrics and dimensions that are available in your explores, as well as kind of that training from the thumbs up and thumbs down that we had given before. Other things we use LLMs for include like actually giving that kind of text-based answer or summary that you saw to like give people an answer in plain English. That's a little nicer than having to interpret a chart themselves or something. But then there's a few different places kind of behind the scenes that we're also using it. One thing we're exploring is auto-generating charts using large language models as well. And one thing to highlight here is that we support a few different LLMs. And so we actually give users like the chance to, like the opportunity to set that in their settings. And so if there's a large language model provider who you prefer to work with, or just kind of want to trade off, like just think one works better than another for your use case, we give you the opportunity to choose GPT-4, ChatGPT, Claude from Anthropic, a few others. We're hosting our own version of Llama's open source model too.
Awesome, thank you. We got a question around, it says, can Delphi be used in an embed or white label use case? And so I don't know if that means embed or white labeled on the Looker side, or whether the idea is to like embed or white label Delphi on the front end, but maybe you could kind of, I guess, talk to both of those.
Yeah, so I'll speak to that. So Delphi can be used for embed and white label, and we've spoken to many companies about this already. So we have an API which you can use to essentially ask questions and get answers in the same way that you can through Slack or through our React application, which Michael showed earlier as well. But there are, other options for like embedding. So we've talked about, as I mentioned, we have a React like standalone application. Like, could we have a React component? Could we have iframe? Like, there's quite a few options. So, and we're pretty flexible in like discussing what those options are with people and considering them. Then if you think about white labeling, I mean, for us, there's not a huge difference between that. I guess, you're using Delphi in your own product in that sense, and we're open to that situation as well. Can widgets be shown, such as the Looker widget initial and answer widget with an embed? We haven't thought about the Looker widget, and maybe Michael can speak to that. Yeah, Michael, can you answer that second part?
I'm actually not sure what that's referring to. What's the Looker widget?
I think is that do you mean the button, where in the Slack thread you can click open Looker? Oh yeah, okay. Yeah, is that possible?
The button where you click open Looker.
In Looker, yeah.
Okay, and so the question is asking.
I think the question is basically, can you pare down what's in the UI so that in an embedded use case, people kind of only have a more narrow set of things to click on or do that's guided by the company that's managing it?
Yeah, that's available right now. Some of the options I glossed over in the setup, actually, you can choose to turn on or off the plain English answers and turn on and off charts. And so, yeah, you can 100% do that.
Awesome. Next one we got from Simon is, I guess, a question on the technical and building side. What are you using to create the visualizations, and what type of visualizations are currently available? Have you got as far as pie charts yet, or is that coming in the future?
So for the work that we've been doing exploring like auto-generating charts for you, we've been looking at e-charts, but I think the vision is to support like multiple different charting frameworks. In terms of what's available in the web app right now, so we're using kind of an open source charting library, which is awesome to help out there. And you have a few different options about the kinds of visualizations. I didn't really show this, but you can do like line charts. We had bar charts. You can actually even save it as just like a table if you want to. And, we're looking at adding more, of course, as well.
I'm going to kind of combine the next two questions because they basically both fall under the category of like BI tools can become a mess, and maybe this is more true of like Looker BI tools rather than semantic layers. But both queries effectively come down to the idea of like there is a lot of good data and content, but also a lot of bad data and content in a Looker instance. How intelligent is Delphi, or how customizable is Delphi to understand like what is of high value, what is of low value? Can it use things like usage or like emojis and titles that allude to the idea that something is verified? Kind of how are you tackling that problem today? How are you thinking about that in the future?
Like one thing I'd say, I didn't mention when introducing us, that Michael and I both led data teams with Looker as our BI tool before. And so yeah, we're aware of this kind of bloat. And actually one of the things that we really hope Delphi will solve is, because it makes it easy to find existing content, that it should help reduce dashboard bloat. Because if someone just searches for something they want and they realize that something exists, we hope that means they're less likely to then just recreate it again because they didn't know that it existed. But with regards to like the point around like ranking about which content we surface, I'll probably let Michael answer that. But we are early and we're moving quickly, so you can imagine that we might improve as well very soon.
Yeah, we actually already use that for ranking the content that we surface, and so like how often something is queried will play into that. And then there's another piece about like, can it learn and improve over time? And so, yeah, that kind of goes back to that feedback concept that we have with the thumbs up and thumbs downs. Certainly it can learn from that over time, like to kind of prefer one explore versus another, especially for like certain types of questions.
And there's some really good like social context that's kind of baked into Looker. Like, so you've got like groups, so for like say like marketing, finance, product, and you can imagine that a user's question or a relevant dashboard to someone inside one of those groups is going to be more similar to someone else inside that group than someone maybe outside. So these are the sorts of things that we want to explore in the future.
Awesome. Probably got time for a couple more questions. We got one more, which is, I think most of the examples you showed, Michael, were around the explorers explorers and code that were written by the end users. But there's some stuff that ships in Looker, like system activity, where you can actually ask questions about your Looker usage itself, and like Looker built explorers. can Delphi be used to query the system activity model and all the explorers that are in there?
I haven't tried it yet, but I don't see any reason why not.
Cool. Perfect. I guess it's a case of the user that you give the API credentials for has to be one who has access to the system activity explorers. But as long as that's the case, it probably comes up with everything else.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
And you know, as you saw in the demo, like we actually have the ability to choose which explorers like Delphi can see. So you need to choose it there as well, I imagine. So.
And then we've had a question from Tom, but it's kind of also part of a question from someone earlier. People in these organizations use both like personal folders, shared governed, shared ungoverned. Can you kind of configure which of those, if you want to say explicitly, not just let it kind of figure it out itself, but say, hey, stuff in this folder, good, stuff in this folder, bad, stuff in personal folders, really bad. Kind of how does that work today? How might that work in the future?
So today we have credential pass-through already, where let's say someone's in Slack or someone's in our web app, and if their credentials match their Looker credentials, they'll only be able to see the folders that you've given them permission to in Looker. So we'll just match the role-based access control in that regard. If you think about would we be able to, is there a way for Delphi to have different sharing permissions? So if you don't do credential pass-through, Delphi effectively has the same level of access for everyone. And then the user that you've given Delphi can have the folders it can see restricted to specific folders. So there's like the two ways of doing it. I don't know if Michael, you want to add anything to that?
I do think, like the way that you can choose in Delphi's setup, which explorers to connect to. I think you could do that for folders too. It's not something that exists yet, but I certainly think it could be useful.
Yeah.
Awesome. Let's take one final one from Simon, which says, how well does this work with unusual business or domain logic? Like if you're doing something that's very atypical, have you seen that it needs more time to learn or be refined for kind of more out there, more unusual kind of business and domains? Or and is there a way, I guess the question from Simon is like, is there also a way to help improve that kind of right at the beginning?
So what's interesting is that with Delphi, we use the semantic layer definitions, right? And so we find the objects within the semantic layer. So if that object is a metric with some really strange like business logic, in some ways Delphi is like ambivalent to that, because as long as the question is related to the right metric, or the metric is named or labeled or described nicely to be found, then we'll find it. If you think about more like training Delphi, like upon first setup, it could be the case that people like say one term that's very, very different, but they always mean this exact metric that's inside the semantic layer. And that's the sort of thing where you can have like a data team on first setup ask a bunch of questions where they know their users will ask questions in that way, and actually the terms that they mean are very different, like named or described terms in the semantic layer, and you can kind of train Delphi in that way. Like that does happen. Does that answer the question, or did you mean something a bit different by domain logic?
Yeah, he says yeah.
Okay.
So all good. Perfect. Well, let's call that there. David and Michael, a big thank you again. This has been really interesting. Awesome to see how the tool is being developed. Awesome to see the demo. And yeah, really appreciate both of you taking the time to join us.
Thanks so much, Dylan. It's been great to be here.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
And for those who have joined us today, a big thank you to all of you. Turnout's been great. We really, as ever, appreciate all of you joining. As I said before, these webinars happen every 2 weeks. So the next one will be early August with the team at Datatonic. We'll be talking about row-level security access. And so head over to spectacles.dev/webinars to sign up for that. And we will send this recording out to everyone sometime in the next couple days. So yeah, thank you to all of you again, David and Michael. Thank you very much. And we'll see you all shortly. Have a great day, everyone.